Hi CS50. Today, I'm so excited to share with you my latest project, Food-4BigTots. Food-4BigTots is a tribute to my mom's food blog, Food-for-Tots. I took up this project to relive my sweet childhood memories of helping my mom with the blog, testing food and modeling for photos, and to continue its mission of helping everyone make simple, healthy food that also tastes really good. The original Food-for-Tots is built on a clunky, rudimental WordPress template. It is also covered with advertisements that often disrupt the layout and user experience. I wanted the new blog to have all the old favorites, no advertisements, and a clean, modern layout. Furthermore, the original blog is a static website, and all the content is hard-coded. I wanted the new blog to be a dynamic web app, designed to be scalable and flexible. Food-4BigTots is built on the MVC paradigm. It has a model, a database containing information about the recipes in the blog, a view, the front-end user interface and content that users interact with, and a controller, the backend server connecting the model to the view. Let's start with the model. It is a relational database, implemented in SQL using SQLite. Data about recipes and categories are stored in separate tables, and each entry has its own ID number, called a primary key. The recipes are then mapped to categories via a mapping table, which references their respective IDs as foreign keys. The ID and name columns of both tables are indexed, which optimizes them for searching. Now, let's look at the view. Since all my HTML pages share a similar layout, I wrote them as templates using Jinja. I created a base template which houses the header, footer, navigation bar, and common metadata, style sheets, and scripts. I built a recipe template on top of it to standardize the layout of my recipe pages. Every page, referred to as child templates, builds upon either one of these two parent templates. The parent templates contain many variables and blocks, which can be set or overridden by child templates or the backend controller to generate a complete HTML page. This keeps my markup dry, as there is no duplicate content in my templates. I implemented features used throughout my app as jinja macros, which are reusable snippets of HTML, and parked them in a separate template. This not only makes my markup dry, modular, and easy to maintain, but also less prone to bugs, as the behavior of these features is standardized. These features include the gallery in my homepage and category pages, the tiles that make up the gallery, the double column layout used in most pages, which has a static left pane for text and a sticky right pane for images, the accordions showing the steps in the recipe pages, which you can click to open and close, and the ingredients checklist in the recipe pages. Styling was the most challenging part of this project. I like Bootstrap's utility classes, as they offer great convenience and are neater than inline styling and IDs. However, I reserved them for isolated cases, as I wanted to follow the best practices of placing CSS in separate custom style sheets, and applying CSS declarations to groups of elements collectively rather than individually. Using custom style sheets also gave me finer control over the values of CSS properties compared to Bootstrap's defaults. When styling bootstrap components in my custom style sheet, I adhered rigorously to the principle of dry styling by overriding bootstrap's defaults whenever possible. This was not feasible with the compiled CSS style sheet provided by their CDN. As such, I had to work with their pre-compiled sass style sheet locally. An advantage of using sass is that their variables are more user-friendly than CSS's native variables, which makes my style sheet more maintainable. If overriding didn't work, or if I needed to style a particular element, I used highly specific CSS selectors so that my declarations are applied over bootstraps. Furthermore, Sass's nesting feature made it easier to write highly specific selectors and eliminate redundant declarations by taking advantage of CSS's cascading nature. To make the UI responsive to different screen sizes, I used Bootstrap's grid layout and placed page components into containers, rows, and columns. With Bootstrap's breakpoints, I set the page layout and the dimensions of page components to change according to the current screen size. This allows my app to be displayed neatly without anything overflowing beyond the screen, no matter which device it is viewed on. Additionally, to make the UI responsive to different default font sizes and line spacing widths on different browsers, I took care to use only relative units, such as rem and line height. I used percent and viewport height as well to account for different screen sizes. I tested the responsiveness of my app rigorously using Chrome DevTools. During testing, I found that my error page was too short, and this resulted in a large white block being shown below the footer on devices with big screens. I corrected this by using CSS media queries to size the page differently for big and small screens. The original Food for Tots page had interesting content and beautiful images, but it did not have an attractive UI. I wanted to make my app more engaging by making it more interactive. Bootstrap's compiled JavaScript plugin provided me with many ready-made interactive components, such as the clickable accordion you saw earlier. Another one is the off-canvas pane, which I used to build a navigation bar that can be hidden. However, I had to make the gallery interactive on my own, using jQuery and JavaScript. I attached event listeners to the tiles to detect mouse hovers. When the user's mouse enters a tile, the thumbnail will become a link to the corresponding recipe. When it leaves, the thumbnail will return. This is achieved by the callback function passed into the event listener, which toggles the Bootstrap classes on the tiles that control their CSS display properties. I hope to use Food-4BigTots to share my family's love for cooking and convince everyone that making healthy and delicious food is quite easy. To help it leave a stronger impression, I utilize open graph tags to design rich previews that will show up when my app is shared on social media and messaging platforms. The controller is the magic that retrieves data from the database and renders the front end when the user visits the app. When the Flask app receives a HTTP request from a visitor, it matches the incoming request URL to the correct view function to be handled. For example, if the user visits a category page, the request will be passed to the view function for category pages, which generates a response to be sent to the user by rendering the correct template. If the user visits a recipe page, a similar process is followed, except that the request will be handled by the view function for recipe pages. However, if the URL cannot be matched to any view function, or a template cannot be found, it will be handled by an error handler, which renders an error page instead. Since my app has many pages that need to be rendered through the same process, and the incoming URLs are stateful, I allowed the view functions to take variable URL rules. This means that they take the components of the URL as arguments and use them to find the correct template to be rendered. Since one view function can handle any requests for one type of page, my code can be kept dry and scalable to accommodate new pages with no changes. These arguments are also passed into queries of the database using Python's built-in SQLite tree library. The database returns metadata about the recipe or category, such as its properly capitalized title, date of publication, the file name of its thumbnail, and the original Food for Tots page. These are all passed into templates to set the values of variables. To automatically generate links to pictures and pages on my app, I used Flask's file path builder function and my custom Jinja filters. By minimizing hard-coded information in the templates, I made the front end more flexible and resilient to changes. The list of categories in the navigation bar and footer are dynamically rendered by querying the database. However, since these features appear on every page, my app will be slowed down by repeated querying, and computational resources will be wasted. To address this, I designed the app to store this data in a file system cookie where the user first visits the app and retrieve it whenever a new page is rendered. Finally, to make Food-4BigTots available on the internet, I hosted it on Python Anywhere. I chose them as they offer the most straightforward hosting process, adequate features for simple web apps, and the permanent file system. I used Git to copy my app's source code, templates, and static files from my GitHub remote repository to their server. Since my SQLite database is not in the repository, I had to copy it over separately using SSH. And with this, Food for Tots' new chapter began. Do give Food for Big Tots and Food for Tots a visit. My mom and I would really appreciate your support. If you like our blogs, or if there's any recipe on Food for Tots that you'd like me to bring over to Food for Big Tots, feel free to leave a comment below or reach out to us via our socials. If you want to have a look at my source code, you can check out the open source GitHub repository for this project. Thank you, and this was CS50.